Your starting class is the most important choice you can make as a new player in Dark Souls. This will not only determine your starting equipment, but also point you on the path towards leveling for the rest of the game. However, that leaves the question: which class is the actual best to start with? Well, the Thief, obviously, since it starts with a Master Key automatically. Then you can choose any other starting gift, like the Black Firebombs that can quickly kill the Asylum Demon before getting a weapon. But then there's the Pyromancer, who starts with a Pyromancy Flame and Fireball, one of the strongest spells in the game, and can quickly gain access to Power Within, the speedrunner's bread and butter. But then there's the Sorcerer, who starts with sorcery and a catalyst to turn on Dark Souls' hidden easy mode. So, which is it? Well, there's only one way to make that determination: with science. Specifically, we're gonna run a little test by beginning with each starting class, but we're going to force them to use the primary weapon of an alternate class, and see who comes out on top when using a weapon they can't properly wield. Perfect science, right? Howdy, I'm Prakuza, and welcome to DevBox. Today, we're putting each of Dark Souls' starting classes to the test to find a definitive answer for which one reigns supreme. In order to do this, we'll lay out some ground rules. First, no skips, glitches, or other exploits allowed. Except for, of course, the Bed of Chaos, because honestly, can you blame me? Second, the run starts after the Undead Asylum, which means we need to get rid of the free souls from the tutorial. But also, we can kill the Asylum Demon normally. Third, we're going any percent on this. So, mandatory bosses only, which means no Painted World, no Gwendolyn, and no DLC. We're doing 10 of these runs in a row, gotta trim the fat somewhere, even if that means skipping my favorite fight on each run. Fourth, each character will have to find a primary weapon from another class, and are not allowed to level the relevant stats to be able to wield them. Finally, we're going to format this video similarly to the Legendary Armaments Elden Ring video. I'll be going over the overarching run in order of the main bosses and locations, going over how each class deals with each boss all at once. Otherwise, 10 runs in a row will start to get extremely repetitive. By the nature of that, each run might not be taking the exact same pathing, so some things might be slightly out of order. For now though, I recorded this intro before actually doing the run, and I'm not even sure if this idea will bear any fruit. So if you're listening to this right now, then I must have gotten something done. Anyway, I'll leave it to Future Proc to introduce our fighters today, and the other various future me's to go through each run. Future Proc here, to show you our colourful cast of characters today. And by colourful, I mean their hair. Because for some reason, I decided that every single one of these guys was going to look like Ryan Reynolds with Super Saiyan God Super Saiyan hair. Could have simply called it Super Saiyan Blue or whatever, but that's neither here nor there. What is here is our first contestant. We've got Spellbonk, a warrior from the lands beyond the fog. He's the most well-rounded fighter. Starting with moderately heavy armor, we'll be trading out his longsword for a catalyst. Can this solid man of war use his head to face off against the demons that stand before him? Next, we've got Knife, the sturdy and heavily armored knight who will be dropping his broadsword for the legendary Bandit's Knife. Usually an upgrade if only he had the dexterity to swing this tiny curved blade. Can a bleeding blade on the cutting edge bring victory to this noble landlord? Or will he prove the oxymoronic nature of that title? Not to be forgotten is our wanderer, the Axeman. I'd play the Omen song here if I wasn't so worried about getting a copyright claim. But can this Shamshir-wielding drifter claim victory with a heavy battle axe weighing him down? Coming up fourth is a personal favourite class of my own, the Thief. Starting with a Master Key, the incredibly powerful Bandit Knife, and a strong start in intelligence and faith, it's hard to argue against this being the best starting class. However, will dropping that knife for a longsword he hasn't the strength to make proper use of keep our boy long and short here from linking the flame? Cresting the hump, we've got Kazan again. The name will become clear as we go forward, but this broadsword-wielding bandit is the closest I can come to affording to actually play the first Berserker. But that still begs the question: Can unfiltered rage overcome a lack of dexterity to keep proper edge alignment with one of history's most prevalent killing tools? Our next contestant is a unique one. Adrian Bowman, an experienced hunter who will be dropping his trusty short sword for an unupgraded hand axe. Will his own skills tracking beasts in the forest and plains be able to match the strength granted by Titanite? Pumping up the back end of the list now is Indeclurb, our resident sorcerer who will be doing his best to show the power of the mind as it overcomes the detriment to the body. Can he channel enough magic in this club to survive against the mindless denizens of Lordran? Next, we've got the magic of humanity on full display. With the pyromancer, My Honor, Dark Souls' greatest claim to fame. But can the strength of the human spirit, the very pygmy soul that burns within us all, lead My Honor to greatness, regardless of the useless scimitar in his hands? Our penultimate contestant is Lunaire, a cleric whose faith will be tested as he must wield the absolutely pitiful wrong video. A meek short sword is all that stands between this man of faith and the heights of the lords themselves. But will belief be enough to overcome the tangible might of Lordran? Finally, we have a vile excuse for a man. A depraved lunatic, the Light Taker. Can he overcome his detestable nature to take the place of the Lord of Sunlight? That is not who I am. Sure. Well, with our cast all settled, I'll leave it to each of these chosen undeads to explain how their runs go. Alright, once we're in Lordran proper, Spellbonk needs to get his primary weapon, the Sorcerer's Catalyst, which we can fortunately do by spending some of the consumable souls found around Firelink at Ricket down in New Londo. Now, I know that his shop is in a precarious place, but it's totally safe as long as you're careful when coming out of menus. So we've got our bonk stick, but what can we actually do with it? Well, we can struggle our way through a few fights. Boy, this does not bode well for the rest of the run. Either way, before we head to our first boss, we'll make full use of the Master Key in order to upgrade our defenses to a Great Shield, the Eagle Shield in Blighttown to be specific, and we'll be giving ourselves access to the Dragon Bridge passive farm. Not sure if this will ever be necessary for Spellbonk, but it's at least good to know that if I need a few extra levels, I can come back here for a bit. We'll also be running around and picking up some Firekeeper souls in order to make our Estus a full heal with our starting HP. Alright. Fresh out of the Undead Asylum, we need to go gather up our weapon of choice, which today is a bandit's knife. Well, that's a problem. Yeah, if you're not aware, it turns out that the bandit knife is unlike most other starting weapons, in that it isn't available for sale at any merchant. Instead, this one needs to be farmed off the Hollow Thieves down in Lower Undead Burg. Now, getting there isn't exactly the issue here, that's why we've got the Master Key for each class. All we need to do is head down through the Blighttown back entrance, head up to Undead Parish, grab the key behind the gate, open up the path to the passive farm, head across the bridge, open the door, and we're golden. The real problem here is killing the Hollow Thieves without a weapon. However, we do have a shield, and there's a nice open fire at the start of the area, which means we can lure some of the thieves, and the dogs as well, up to the mass pyre and let them run into the flames so they can burn to death. With the help of some throwing knives as well, we can make sure to keep their aggro, and we can make their attacks bounce off of the shield so they back into the fire even faster. This tactic is still doable without a shield, by the way, but much riskier. The point is, after about an hour of farming, we get our knife. Would have been nice to get this thing from a shop instead, but hey, I'm sure I won't have to do too many miserable farms like this for the remainder of the video. And certainly not again during this run. Sorry, I think my foreshadowing is getting a bit on the nose. Let's distract ourselves by noticing how goated the bandit knife is, as I deal upwards of 43 damage with a backstab and 61 with a riposte, even though I lack the dexterity to even wield it. Like, I know that's not great numbers or nothing, but with a weapon I can't wield, I should be doing 5, max. Not almost killing the starting hollows on the way to Undead Burg. That extra critical damage on dagger-type weapons is legit, as long as I can backstab or parry my enemy. Regardless, now that we've got our starting weapon, and we've picked up a handful of throwing knives, normal and poison-flavored, we can head out to our first boss. Fun bit of channel lore. The Wanderer was actually the first class that I chose the first time I played Dark Souls. And that first build was complete shit, to be honest. Not for any fault of the Wanderer itself, but because I was still very green on the Souls-like leveling system. I mean, this was before the DLC had even released, let alone the wider series and cavalcade of imitators and innovators that would follow up DS1. For now, though, we're looking to make an even worse build, by heading through the New Londo to Blighttown back entrance and grabbing a battle axe from Andre. Now, I'll note here that this is our first class to specifically lack the strength to wield its newly designated weapon, which means that not only do we dink against every enemy, but the moveset has also been removed and replaced with a completely pathetic swing with a massive recovery window if it doesn't hit anything. This is the case for R1 and R2, offering the same fumbling attack regardless of input. So, for the Wanderer, we're going to back up the unusable battle axe with an offhand S-stock. With this axe-sword combo, I almost feel like first Berserker Kazan, minus the sexy Ben Starr voice, DFO lore, and new fun gameplay mechanics. So like, Kazan we have at home. Well, as we get this playthrough set up, we'll also be grabbing the Dragon Bridge passive farm, and even freeing Griggs to give us access to magic weapon, which we won't be using pretty much at all. Honestly, at this point, I'm on like my 3rd run of this playthrough, and I still don't really have a go-to way to empower the primary weapon. Regardless, for now, we've got a few Titanite shards shoved into both the battle axe and the S-stock, and we're ready to start facing off against some bosses. Now, it's time to put my current favorite starting class to the test. The Thief. With a goated starting weapon, a dex-heavy stat line that also has a pretty decent spread into int and faith right off the bat, and starting with a master key so I can black firebomb the Asylum Demon, I couldn't imagine anything ruining this run for me. Well, except for having to immediately drop that goated weapon in order to head to Andre and buy a longsword that I, once again, don't have the strength to wield. Like the Axeman's battle axe. Spoiler for that one, but not having the strength for something is infinitely worse than not having the dex. So, this is going to be rough. But hey, we've got a few things to supplement that lack of strength. For one, we can replace the shield in our left hand for something that better fits the thief vibe, which is to say a parrying dagger. You know, a weapon that's already supposed to be in the offhand, as we established back in my left-handed run. We'll also be dropping down into the catacombs in order to upgrade the longsword through the fire path, which I found was pretty strong in a previous run, so look forward to that discovery a few segments from now. But yeah, I definitely intend to go that path for pretty much every weapon from here on out. The lack of damage scaling makes it the best early choice for getting the biggest bang on our unwieldable damage buck. And now we're ready to go hunt down some bosses. What? Oh, right. Run. Yeah. Who are we again? Kazan again. Okay. Only this time the sword's in the right hand. So we need pick up an axe for the left. Butcher knife seems fun. We already upgraded our broadsword with fire. So Mildred's not an issue. But it does take a hot minute. Okay, we're good. Good night. Moving on. What's up, guys? We're here with Adrian Bowman to see if we can beat all of Dark Souls with an unupgraded hand axe and a bow. Let's get started by heading to Undead Burg in order to grab the hand axe from the undead merchant. This guy's weird. And get the composite bow from New Londo. And we even get a dragon bridge to help us get arrows. Sick. Alright guys, but first, make sure to slam on that like button and don't forget to subscribe for more content every day. Tomorrow, we're gonna pay poor people to let us kick them around Drang Lake for a week. Huh? Wait, where, are we out? Howdy, okay, time for into Club to do a run and right. Okay, this is the sorcerer run, and in this case, the sorcerer's weapon of choice is going to be the club. Quite the depraved weapon choice for a man in the mind, but who am I to second guess? Come on, get together. All right. So we're starting by picking up a new weapon, the Tin Banishment Catalyst. You know, since we already used the regular catalyst for the warrior run, it won't be right to use it again in this one. So we replace it with the first alternative we can find in Playtown, and it's a little worse, but not really by much, even if we don't have the strength to properly wield it. Apparently, that's only for the bonk though, so our spellcasting is fine. Next we Next, we need to head down to find the Undead Merchant in order to buy our club, the actual primary weapon for this run, which we also don't have the strength for. So we're technically wielding two weapons we can't use. Looking back at the footage is kind of wild, with both weapons slots having those little X's over them. Finally, to finish up our prep, we scrounge some souls together and buy great and heavy soul arrow from Griggs. Thanks to the Master Key, we can get all the way to Lower Undead Burg without killing any bosses, but those are those are now coming soon. Come on. There's gotta be more around here. Huh? Oh, right. We're doing the thing. Yeah, it's time for which one is this? My Honor. What is he again? Yep. Pyromancer. Kind of on the nose, huh? Alright. Yeah, let's go with that. So, My Honor needs a weapon, and fortunately, one can be found for him fairly quickly. He'll be using the scimitar, really should be called a Shamshir, but I'll go with the game's name for the weapon for now. And those can be farmed off of skeletons in the graveyard leading to the catacombs. I've also got some fireballs that can help me kill them. This shouldn't take too long. You know, each of these guys gives 50 souls per kill, so I'll let some of you nerds in the back do the math on exactly how long this took. Not getting off to a good start. Oh, and would you look at that? We could have bought one from the Undead Merchant right away. Excuse me, please. Nope. Not really doing the trick. Alright. A few things to start the run. First, we need to go pick up a short sword from the Undead Merchant, lightning spear from the Sunlight Altar by the Dragon Farm Bridge, and of course some thematically appropriate armor from somewhere. Don't think about it too hard. Let's get to those bosses. Alright, final run for the depraved. Let's get this over with. First of all, getting our weapon of choice is pretty easy. All we need to do is drop down into the catacombs real quick, and we can pick up the club that comes with the cleric set down here. It's almost like we traded out the old wood club for a metal one. Not much of an upgrade, though. Couldn't even spring for the Morning Star for the bleed, huh? Is this a joke to you? With our prep finished, we can move right into our first boss fight, the Taurus Demon. How's this go? Well, not great at first, or at second. But hey, third time's the charm. While I'm not really doing what one might call good damage, whether I try to hit him with the old spellbonk stick, or when I bash him with my great shield, I do manage to turn in some decent luck in order to get the boss to jump off the wall. Did I earn it? No. But hey, a win's a win. In a casual run with the bandit knife, you know, when starting as a thief, the bleed effect would usually be the star of the show. It usually only takes about 3 hits in order to proc the bleed, which then deals enough damage to remove a full section of the boss's health bar. However, since I don't have the actual dexterity to wield the weapon, the bleed will never proc. In fact, without meeting the parameters to wield a weapon, none of its status effects will work. In DS1, this mostly means poison and bleed, but considering that bleeding enemies is the whole point of the bandit knife, I'll need to find a useful workaround to make sure I can still get some use out of this thing against bosses. That's not even to mention the fact that I deflect off of everything I hit like it's a wall, even if it's an enemy that my attack should slide right through. As for the Taurus Demon himself, our way through this fight relies a little less on the bandit knife and a little more on those throwing knives I brought. Namely, the poison variety, which can inflict poison after about 3 or 4 knives, depending on how quickly I can send them each out. Then, some regular throwing knives add enough damage to allow that first poisoning to finish the job. The damage isn't great though, for some reason. This is the first run so far where I've actually upgraded my weapons before facing off against the Taurus Demon. And the strength of that upgrade really shows in how much damage I'm doing here with the S-Stock. Of course, that isn't entirely a positive, as the prospect of actually getting to deal some damage to a boss gives me a bit of false confidence. And you know what they say, pride cometh before the fall. Still, on a second attempt, I nearly get killed again. Multiple times, in fact. I really need to learn to dodge this guy. Anyway, the damage wins out and we get the kill. Taurus Demon goes down easy as long as I stay away from the edge and don't let him smash me with his giant axe. I'm gonna be brief here, because it turns out the fight goes extremely well. Like, look at that plunging attack, and I get to do it twice. We're not even using the parrying dagger here. That's straight up the actual unwieldable longsword, chunking away most of the boss's health. And then we go ahead and use the parrying dagger to finish off the rest of the fight. Boom. Butcher knife go burr. It's already +5 by now. We ain't doing that +0 life anymore. With our weapons in hand, our first task is to take on the mighty Taurus Demon. This guy used to be a regular guy like you and me, but the Chaos Flame warped his body into something you wouldn't believe. He gets us on our first attempt, but when we keep our distance on a rematch, we get our win, we can move on to the next location. Taurus Demon. So, Taurus Demon goes fine with magic at our disposal. As long as we keep our distance and bait some attacks, we can pretty safely use Heavy Soul Arrow. Man, whoever said magic was the free baby easy mode might have been onto something. What? No, I'm looking for more... Not important. We're out of order already? It's the first boss. Alright, well, spoiler I guess. We went for Capra Demon first this run, but we'll talk about the Taurus Demon for now. So, full disclosure at this point, we've already freed Laurentius, and picked up a few extra uses of Fireball, Combustion, and Iron Flesh. We're also decked out in the Elite Knight armor, but that won't last for long. Anyway, yeah, all of the extra pyromancies we have, and the absolute immovable object that Iron Flesh makes us, is more than a match for the Taurus Demon. Honestly, killing him is more of a formality at this point, but it still makes for a decent proof of concept for the run. Considering that Lightning Spear is intended to be behind the Taurus Demon, it's no surprise to see that this one absolutely shreds the boss. Man, I might not even have time for any more common. Next up is the Bell Gargoyle, or should I say Gargoyles? Because of course, when it already takes 5 minutes to bring one down to half health, the best possible thing that Dark Souls can do is to summon a second one. And naturally, when there's 2 of them trying to roast me, it's only a matter of time before they break me. Maybe we should update our gear. Clearly our damage needs some improvement, and the Eagle Shield simply isn't cutting it. So instead, let's spend a little time down in the catacombs to find a replacement for the Eagle Shield, by firebombing the Pinwheel skeletons for a little while. This shouldn't take too long. I'd give anything for that card to have been a joke, but here we are, 2 hours and about 200 firebombs later. Had to go do that passive dragon farm to earn some firebomb money, and we've suddenly got the Pinwheel shield. Another trip to the dragon farm until we can actually equip it, and now we can try the Gargoyles again. There's certainly a learning curve for using the old bone wheel shield, but I tune in with my inner lawnmower, and eventually, the gargoyles fall, letting me ring the bell and make my way on the forward path of progression. While I try my best to recreate my success against the Taurus Demon with the gargoyles, I've run low on poison daggers during my interim trip around the world. So, instead of getting a consistent tick of poison to wither each gargoyle down, I play a long game of cat and mouse with my throwing knives in order to keep the bosses at bay. I've upgraded the bandit knife a bit, but it still isn't anywhere near ready to deal the damage that I need to take on 2 enemies at a time. Distance is the only advantage I'll get in this fight, and it's barely enough to see me through. The gargoyles don't really get dangerous until the second one shows up and starts breathing fire everywhere. But having an S-Stock at +5 at this point does mean that my damage is at least high enough to break one of them down rather quickly. Then, once we're back to only one gargoyle, whether it's the more aggressive starting one or the fire-breathing backup in the second phase, the rest of the fight goes pretty quick. It's all touch and go without a shield, but not enough to send me over the edge, like against the Taurus Demon. So, for the gargoyles, let's upgrade the supplement we're already getting from the parrying dagger by also summoning Lautric and Lautric? Lautric, what are you doing over there, buddy? Do I really need to come save you already? Goodness, I won't feel guilty about murdering you this run. Anyway, with 2 NPCs helping us, well, the gargoyles outnumbering us now isn't anywhere near an issue. I mean, look at that damage. I practically don't even need to engage at this point. Sick. You go, cousin, again. Fuck him up. Alright guys, now we've got the Pale Gargoyles, and these guys are kinda weird. The first one comes out and fights us like normal, but then his buddy backs him up halfway through the fight and breathes fire the whole time. It was nuts. I kept my bow arm steady, and after a blunder on my first try, from things heating up when the double teamed me from top to bottom, I came back and actually got a slow but sick victory. Bell rung and we can go see what Lord Dran has for us next. You won't believe it. Okay, whoever said magic was a free baby easy mode can go straight up eat a dick. Damn it. Check it off. Alright. We're doing a little better on our second try, but, I got some stuff to say about the idea that a sorcery build is somehow an extraordinarily easy method throughout the game. For one, our damage might be very good, but I only have access to it because I specifically avoided every enemy on the way into the fight. The limited number of spellcasts makes the run back for every fight a balancing act of conserving that limitation against the danger and HP drain posed by the enemies that might smack the hell out of me for ignoring them. Then there's the range, which is less than the composite pose damage drop-off, and the actual aim of the attack. DS1's terrible aim doesn't really show against the gargoyles since their hurt boxes are so huge, but it'll come up later. Trust me. Trust. Anyway, we kill them and we get ready to ring the bell. So yeah, we've upgraded again the souls from the Taurus Demon. I mean, we were able to actually buy fire orbs, which can melt the first gargoyle, basically on its own. However, melting the boss or not, and massive defense boost or not, nothing kills the chosen undead faster than a touch of greed. Also, against the second gargoyle, Flash Sweat would probably do better than Iron Flesh, but that's hardly the problem at play here. The much bigger obstacle is getting my hits on point, staying out of the danger zone of the fire breath, and coming out with an at least slightly clean victory. So I thought the lightning spear might not have the strength to get through the whole fight on its own, which is why I've upgraded my short sword up the fire path. And yeah, it rips the gargoyles up, but not as much as the lightning spear does. Which means we have 2 ways of absolutely chunking these dudes down. Pretty cool. Can't honestly say that I'm excited to fight the Capra Demon. However, I will say that the Bone Wield Shield is doing some great work against the boss and the dog. The best part is actually the fact that even the Capra Demon seems to bounce off the shield itself. I'm not really accustomed to using great shields, so this level of stability is pretty new for me. Combine this with the raw damage of the Pinwheel's Neat Spin, and the Capra Demon doesn't last long. This is going to be one of those out of order sections, as on this run I didn't fight the Capra Demon until after ONS, but given how the video is structured, I guess I'll comment on it now. Needless to say, the Capra Demon was a bit too much for me to handle with the build I was running when first attempting him before Quelaag. However, by the time I reached further into the playthrough, I'd gotten some upgrades on the bandit knife and gotten access to some new consumables to throw. More on that when we actually get to them. But I'll note that the pivot certainly makes better use of the strength focus that this build takes in order to keep the bandit knife unusable further into the run. And you'll see exactly how mistaken my original plan was the further into the playthrough I get. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I both expected the Capra Demon to be harder and easier. For one, not having a shield or very high poise means that the dogs can hold me in place if they tag me as I run up the stairs. For two, the S-Dog has a pretty decent moveset, but the hitbox at close range can be kinda wonky, especially for smaller enemies like the dogs. So I was kind of expecting to have trouble killing Capra's backup before the group eventually overwhelmed me. However, I somehow make it through this fight relatively unscathed. Like, sure, Capra slams me once or twice, but I'm also kind of trying to flex on him with some poison knives. The knife run before this one got me really into using poison actually. Still, we make it through on our first try, and while it certainly could have gone a touch cleaner, we're not exactly struggling here. We've got another out of order Capra fight here. Because for some reason I decided to come back after getting into Sen's Fortress. Turned out that actually getting into the depths wasn't exactly a priority at this point. So yeah, I've got a Shotel, the Lautrec hooked sword. Whatever. And it absolutely shreds the Capra Demon. Okay, back to the actual order of the run. Yeah, stupid dogs. Got nothing I can. Let's go, guys. It's our GOAT, Adrian Bowman, versus the GOAT man himself, the Capra Demon. This guy is like seriously threatening and even sicked his pet dogs on us. It was so scary. Dude, we were terrified. For real, for real. But you know what? We baited out his attacks, kept our distance, and the Capra Demon was turned Capra Team off in no time. I give every ounce of credit for my victory here to the Wolf Ring, which I've been picking up in Darkroot Garden in pretty much every run. Basically, if you ever see this gray armor symbol with the up arrow, know that it's because I'm currently wearing the Wolf Ring. Watch out for it on every build at one point or another. But yeah, without the poise from the Wolf Ring letting me eat a hit from one of the dogs at the start of the fight, there's no way I'd have been able to get in position to snipe them down with my magic. As for killing the dogs, regular Soul Arrow does the job, and then we can swap to Great Heavy Soul Arrow, which we purchase from Griggs. Prepare for all our money to go towards buying magic for Indeclurb, by the way. Blast the Capra Demon himself down, after baiting out some of his bigger attacks with the longer recovery frames. Alright, we'll be caught up after this. So yeah, my honor went for Capra Demon first to get quick access to the depths to release Laurentius and get access to some new pyromancy and start upgrading my flame. So at this point, we only had access to a single stack of fireballs, which was 8 casts, as long as I didn't have to waste any getting into the boss arena in the first place. So we're already very limited on resources. Which is why we prepped for this by heading down into Blighttown and picking up Poison Mist. Now, while Poison Mist makes this fight doable this early, it doesn't exactly make it easy. Especially considering that Capra Demon likes to either walk right out of the mist, or even if he does happen to be in it, he likes to attack from the perfect distance to make him extremely difficult to read when obscured by the cloud. So yeah, there are some growing pains that comes with learning a whole new class of magic that I am wildly unfamiliar with. But after a few tries, we get a good run and get a good poison me on Capra, and light the boy up to get this run underway for real. Yeah, we skipped the Capra Demon entirely on this run, so instead have a quick Moonlight Butterfly kill. Very quick, because we A, have range, and 2, have Lightning Spear. which are kind of the same point, but yeah, this immediately rips the butterfly apart. What the f***? Where are you? He would have given us the key later. Not one more. What? You cheated? With the Capra Demon down, we get access to the Large Ember and the Rat Humanity farm. This won't be super critical moving forward for Spellbonk, but I expect the others to mention if it has any utility to come down here as we progress. Unrelated to this specific location, but on our way down to the next boss, we'll also be killing Lautric, looks like Life in Lordran already did it to him. Same, bro. Same. And we get our third Firekeeper soul as we head in through the back door into Blighttown. Also, while we're here, we'll head to the opposite end of the swamp and farm up some green Titanite shards from the slugs by the entrance to the Great Hollow. They'll be useful soon, but not worth mentioning quite yet. Okay, so you might have noticed this already because of the haphazard order this run is taking in relation to the previous one. Boy, I hope I get more into a groove on the other 8 of these. But yeah, I've been upgrading the bandit knife up the magic path. So for the power-up update section, we've got a few new tools added to our toolbox. For one, we've gotten our bandit knife up to magic +5 thanks to Ricket, and the green titanite farm at the entrance to the Great Hollow in Blighttown. We've also killed Lautric, picked up the third Firekeeper soul. It's actually important to do those two in that order, so Lautric doesn't kill Anastasia, the Firelink Firekeeper. And we've restocked on our throwing knives. The fire bombs we'll eventually use on the Capra Demon won't be much help against the next boss anyway. Okay, we're at the first major upgrade phase after Capra Demon, picking up the Large Ember in the depths, killing Lautric for the Fappering, and gathering up whatever other items I haven't yet from my normal list of treasures at this point. In the case of the Axeman here, that includes the Wolf Ring from Darkroot Garden. Although, considering the format of this video and the fact that I like to grab that one early, I've probably mentioned it already. Whatever. The point is, we have an almost +10 S-Stock, some hot bling, and we're ready to take on the healthiest boss in the early game. Yeah. Quick detour here. We're picking up the Large Ember, going into Blighttown to farm large and green titanite shards, get invaded by Maneater Mildred, and now we're killing Lautric. Again, more to stop him from killing the Firekeeper than to get the Fappering, but I mean, I will be putting it on at a certain point. For now, though, we're almost rounding out the upgrades and heading for the next boss, who we actually fought before getting into the depths because this whole run is now out of order. It'll get more streamlined by Sen's Fortress. Large Ember, Slug Farm, upgrade Butcher Knife, get strong. Now, we had to prepare for the next obstacle that was going to be in our way. To do this, we had to go down into the depths. It was like totally gross down there. I thought we were going to get a disease or something, but instead we came out with the Large Ember, which lets us upgrade the composite bow enough to take out Lautric. But he decided he didn't even want to fight us, and straight up gave us his Fappering without any trouble. The same goes for the Ferris follower in Darkwood Garden. Everyone seems to love us and wants to give us cool stuff. Isn't that awesome? The depths isn't the most crucial step for this run, but this is the interim moment when I finish buying the final spells I need from Griggs, and take the Billowing Dragoncrest ring, in order to massively boost the power of my sorceries. At this point, we also have the obligatory Lautric kill, where he once again decides that this world is too much for him to handle. Too true, man. Too true. This is also a decent time to mention that we've been upgrading the club through the Fire Path, a very familiar plan at this point, and we're also on our way to acquiring more gear to power up the magic on the build, but we don't quite have the damage to get it done yet. To be less vague, we've killed the Hydra, but the Crystal Golem holding Dusk is still too tanky to be easily killed right now. So Dusk spells, catalyst, and armor are all locked until we can get through that guy. But our spells and our club aren't really up to the task, and in the club is very squishy at this point in the run, since most of my souls have either needed to be invested in buying new spells and rings, or shoved into int. For once, our trip to the depths here has nothing to do with the Large Ember. Instead, this is where we find Laurentius and freed him so that we can start shopping from him at Firelink. Our first major purchase from him was Combustion, which has become my go-to melee attack for most regular enemies, as well as some extra casts of Fireball and Fire Orb. In the meantime, I've also started my Descent into the Catacombs, but not for the fire upgrade on the weapon this time. Instead, I wanted the Dark Moon Seance Ring so that I could increase my attunement slots. Considering that pyromancies are so limited in their number and casts, this felt like a pretty obvious choice for getting enough damage online in order to kill the upcoming bosses. However, no matter how I've upgraded my Pyromancy Flame, or beefed up my casting slots, none of my current spells are going to really matter against the next boss. What would matter was going down into New Londo and having Ricket upgrade my scimitar down the magic upgrade path. Build update for Lunaire. We use the Divine Ember we got from killing the Moonlight Butterfly, and now have the Short Sword Divine +5. Thanks to more grinding against slugs in Blighttown. It's going to be so nice to be done farming these guys soon. Only one more run to go after this one. Given that we're doing mandatory fights only, we'll be skipping the Gaping Dragon and heading straight to Quelaag. And some folks complained about Stellar Blade being too objectifying. Clearly, it's a core tenet of the Souls-like formula. Anyway, Quelaag is a war of attrition. Even if the Bone Wheel does crazy damage with its full spin, a lot of the individual hits tend to miss, especially when I'm aiming at Quelaag's legs and she decides to jump away or even turn. I also haven't upgraded the shield much at this point, but with enough perseverance, we avoid the lava, run away from the blast, and get the kill. Now we can ring the bell and move on. So, I'd already known when coming in here that Quelaag would be a problem, since she's immune to fire damage. However, as I approached the fight nearly 100 poison knives in hand, I had no idea that she was also immune to being inflicted with either poison or toxic. Great. To be honest, I'd vaguely remembered it before coming in here, but wasn't 100% sure until I'd already thrown about a dozen poison knives. Not a cheap discovery, by the way. I'm not exactly rolling in the souls in this run, unless I want to spend a few hours passive farming on the bridge. But even then, this is the second of 10 runs, and nobody got time for that. This means that Quelaag is going to be a task. I mean, she's not too hard, but a mistake on my footing or getting caught between her legs when she does the explosion can quickly spiral out of control. And considering that each attempt can take upwards of 10 minutes at a time, I'm hard pressed to get this done in one. It takes 2, and the one that finally gets the win is a 17-minute long slog of slashing at her legs with my unusable magic knife, but a win's a win, and we make our way on through. Really hope I don't have to deal with another fight this slow again. It should not come as a surprise at this point that Quelaag isn't really much of a problem for me. Especially not after having been forced to give her the death by 1,000 cuts across the previous playthroughs so far. Don't get me wrong, the area denial and the insane range on the massive AoE can certainly be a problem, and will lead to a pretty quick death, but the key here is to not be greedy. The fight is going to take a million years anyway, so no point in trying to rush. Take a deep breath, accept that this is the next 100 years of your life, and watch your footing. Easy as that for a first try kill. Alright, we're back in time and fighting Quelaag. Or should I say we're letting Mildred kill Quelaag. Yeah, Mildred rips through Quelaag's massive health bar, which is a huge help since all I have is a parrying dagger and a fire longsword that the boss is basically immune to. So, without Mildred, I definitely don't have the damage to really get through this fight. Man, how awesome are the Dark Souls devs to include these summonable NPCs. Super helpful. And honestly, Mildred's weapon is pretty sick. Wonder how good it would be to run through the whole game with. Maybe something to consider in another run. slope meme. Eat shit, spider. Guys, the next lady straight up stripped in public. Like, is this even legal? I don't think so, and neither's having a spider grafted to your legs by the Chaos Flame either. So, we have to do our due diligence and make sure that this crazy Quelaag lady is sent to the proper authorities. And by that, of course, I mean that Adrian Bowman is going to shoot her in the face over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. We don't care how cool your warrior ponytail looks, lady. We don't want any of the fire you're spitting. Well, free aiming isn't exactly an option here to hit Quelaag in the body the same way Adrian Bowman was able to. The raw damage of the soul arrows more than makes up for the lack of extra flinching, especially when I have the time to wind up a heavy soul arrow. That being said, Great Soul Arrow has kind of been the MVP for this run, both in and out of boss fights. The balance of speed, power, and number of casts makes it a great utility spell to get us from one bonfire to the next. I'm not quite at kill every enemy level, but it's doing work, as can be seen as it absolutely shreds Quelaag. So, Pyromancy against Quelaag. How's it go? Well, in the case of the damage I'm taking, not too bad. I've had 7 runs of practice to get a good handle on how to watch out for lava and the AoE, so avoiding damage isn't exactly the problem, even if I do stumble into unsafe territory once or twice. The real problem is dealing damage, because, as it turns out, Quelaag is completely immune to fire damage. As a fun little twist, she's also immune to the additional supplement of the Poison Breath that I used to get through Capra Demon. In that case, my only option was to pull out the scimitar I don't have the dex to wield, or the int to scale its magic damage with, and hack away at those spider legs for about 11 straight minutes. Could you imagine if this was my only option on every boss? Abysmal. But we're through. Well, with fire taken completely out of my toolkit, this might be the fastest Quelaag of the entire video. Like, Lightning Spear absolutely chunks her down. The short sword isn't doing much, which is to be expected, to be honest. It's only Divine +5, and I still only have the base amount of faith to use the Lightning Spear. Most of my other souls have been going into Vitality and Endurance. Still, 10 casts of Lightning Spear is more than enough to take out Quelaag. Unsurprisingly, the Ceaseless Discharge does very little to offer any troubles when you get him to jump off the ledge. Not much to say, except for the fact that killing him here opens the path into the Demon Ruins, which means that we can now pick up the large Flame Ember, and start working on an upgrade that I'm sure will be very helpful for a lot of future runs. That's right. We're heading down into the catacombs for the Skeleton Blacksmith and upgrading the Bonewheel Shield into the Fire Path, which immediately jumps the damage from 120 to 208. Although the damage is now split between physical and fire, however, we're through most of the fire-resistant enemies, and hitting fire +6 thanks to the large Flame Ember and a random red Titanite chunk we found in our adventures, jumps that all the way to 306. That will be incredibly helpful as we move forward. Well, thankfully Ceaseless goes a lot easier than Quelaag did for old Knife here. I know we call this cheese, by the way, but like, is it really? There's a unique animation for it, and it requires a specific setup in order to get him to rip his arm off of his body and prep him for the jump. Like, it's easy, for sure, but I don't know if I'd go so far as to call it cheese. It's not like we're unplugging the Ethernet cable when Crota kneels. I'd show footage of what I'm talking about if I'd been recording back then. But for now, if you don't get what I mean, then I gotta ask. Are you in the know? I mean, what do I say at this point when it comes to Ceaseless? Make him jump, smack up his arm, and we're off. No sweat here. Get that cheese. And also get that large Flame Ember so we can start working on getting the longsword across the +5 threshold. And start working on getting to +10 by the end of this run. But that's it. On to the next area. More cheese, please. Holy cow, guys! Adrian Bowman cheesed this boss so hard, I think he might have actually exploited the code of the game. think that's a legal move. Legal or not, we're going to accept it and move on. One of the few times where fighting him normally would have been fine, I still decide to cheese Ceaseless. I'd feel worse about it, but I'm not a huge fan of the normal fight, even if I do have range. So we throw him off the cliff and move on. No sleep lost on this strategy. You know, I'm not actually sure if Ceaseless is immune to fire or not, but it hardly matters. Not only because my scimitar is imbued with magic, but also because I haven't fought him legit in 10 years. And I ain't starting now. In the meantime, we also join the Chaos Servant Covenant and get Great Chaos Fireball. More cheese, but for once, we'll be leaving immediately since we don't need to pick up the large flame ember. Then we take our route up through Sen's Fortress. It's pretty linear, but I do have some specifics that make heading through here easier that I can't imagine won't be the same from run to run. Basically, head up past the rolling boulder, then run up in the other boulder path and drop off the ledge around the broken pillar. Head down and kill the Mimic before heading into the secret room that gets opened by the boulder crashing through a wall to pick up the gold serpent ring. Finally, head to the top and kill the firebomb throwing giant. Technically, this guy can be neutralized by breaking his pots, but killing him outright is a more permanent solution, and gives a Titanite chunk, which can be critical and extremely rare for certain upgrade paths. Not sure why we're bothering to include the climb up Sen's Fortress. Parry some snakes, the now magically enhanced bandit knife can kill them in 2 parries, and they mostly fight one-on-one, except for the 2 at the start. And then we poison the firebomb throwing giant. It only takes about 2 throwing knives to get the proc, and 2 me's gets the kill. GG, easy. More of a time sink than anything, but still neat. Most of Sen's Fortress goes pretty normal, except for the fact that once I reach most of the way through here, I take a detour to finally head down into the catacombs and get my battle axe buffed with fire from the skeleton blacksmith. This will wind up being a pretty impressive boon for the primary weapon, even when we can't actually wield it, so maybe expect to see this in future runs. And if I started applying this to weapons earlier in some of the other runs, then consider this the moment where upgrading the primary weapon with fire clicked as the proper go-to for making these weapons usable. Alright, time to finally catch up with what you've already seen. We're doing mostly fine in the fortress. And use the shuttle to quickly kill Richter. I'm actually making this stop now to get the rare ring of sacrifice, thanks to something I learned I need to prepare for on a previous run. But you aren't there yet, so I'll comment on it later. Snake get tracked. Giant good night. I made Adrian Bowman spend 24 hours in an abandoned fortress filled with snakes and traps and mimics, and you won't believe what happened. And don't forget that if you try to guess what happened without subscribing, your balls will literally fall off. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button before you lock in your guess. Alright, are you locked in? Because Adrian Bowman killed a freaking giant in an isolated night. Isn't that crazy, guys? I wish I had whatever material the snake men use for their shields and armor, because this shit is magic proof. Like, it completely blocks my soul arrows. However, that isn't the most important thing we'll find in here. What really matters for this run is finding Logan, and picking up Soul Spear and Homing Soul Mass. I don't actually have the int to use Soul Spear yet, and Homing Soul Mass only summons 4 little balls instead of 5, again, a lack of int. But now that we've got these spells, we can spend all of our souls from the next few locations and bosses entirely on int levels. So, all we need to do is kill some bosses. Easy enough. Not gonna lie, I really like the Chaos Magic here, but I really can't suggest it as a regular part of the Pyromancy toolkit, especially when trying to use Pyromancy as the basis for all of my damage. Each cast might be strong, and has the potential to double tick on most enemies, but I don't think I'll be keeping it in my toolkit for very long after Sen's Fortress. The Divine Short Sword is surprisingly great against the Snake People. Definitely helps that this weapon has the same moveset as the longsword, and since Lunaire is missing the dexterity to wield it instead of the strength, he still gets to use the full moveset. Plus, given that I needed to dump tons of souls into Faith to cast Lightning Spear, the magic damage from being Divine +5 is insane for a weapon that I still technically cannot wield. And of course, Lightning Spear goes hard when the Divine Short Sword won't cut it. Alright, at the top of Sen's Fortress, we face off against the Iron Golem. And I'll be honest, the Fire Bone Wheel is doing some work. Do you think I could repurpose this footage for a shield-only or lawnmower run? Maybe both. I mean, I sure do love Dark Souls, so I could keep making content out of this game forever. Although, having the Iron Golem fall over the edge when he only has like 10 HP left, thanks Dark Souls. Love the feeling of spit in my eye. A few interesting notes at this point in the run. For one, turns out Iron Golem, like Quelaag, is also immune to poison. So, good luck for anyone looking to do a poison-only run without skips, considering that 2 mandatory bosses are immune to the stuff. Second, turns out the throwing knives that I intended to use as my supplementary weapon for the knife run scale with Dex, and considering that for the challenge I need to not level Dex so that I can never use the bandit knife, these things are starting to fall off worse than a bungee instructor who failed knot class in the Boy Scouts. As a result, we're going to be pivoting a bit, from throwing knives only to encompassing all throwable projectiles. Because yeah, I'm not getting this done with the dagger, or the throwing knives. Not on their own at least. So we're subbing in some black fire bombs to get us over the hump. Specifically, we're still using the bandit knife in order to get the Iron Golem to stumble, and then getting some extra damage out of the black fire bombs, not a lot of damage mind, in order to get him to take the full tumble and head over to the side. Easily the biggest obstacle for this run, and not gonna lie, soured my mood for a while. Like, for the rest of the knife run, a while. Not a lot of good left to say about this one, to be honest. We've got another healthy boy with Iron Golem, and our S-Stock Battle Axe combo doesn't really have the damage to get this over with quickly. In fact, even though the S-Stock is at +10, it can't get the boss to fall over in one cycle. Most likely because of how stunted the moveset is in my left hand, and the fact that it could be a lot stronger if I two-handed it. But in DS1 we can only two-hand our primary right-handed weapon, which is taken up by that Battle Axe. That I also can't two-hand, because if I did, I would meet the strength requirement to wield it. That would go against the challenge. Although, I never even swing it once in the entire fight, because its wonky hitbox would be a huge detriment right now. Yeah, if Solaire and Lautric or Maneater Mildred were beasts in their respective fights, Iron Tarkus is straight up a free win button. Like, I can pretty much leave the Iron Golem entirely to him. You know, if I had enough patience to actually let the NPCs do their own business. Still, Tarkus does so much damage that I might not even have to cut down the fight to fit it over this voiceover. GG, easy game. Thanks, Tarkus. Shit, I'm up. Okay, let's smack up the Iron Golem. Don't even need to actually drop him off the bridge. Alright, we good? Can I go back to sleep now? Yeah? This Iron Giant literally tried to throw Adrian Bowman off a bridge, but we didn't let him. Instead, we spent 100 million souls to make sure that our boy Adrian Bowman had enough arrows to take on a dozen golems. And do you know what he did with them? He shot them all into the golem's legs, chest, and head until the giant mass of metal and grafted souls was no more. This goes pretty well for a while. Yeah, it turns out the magic does pretty decent damage to the Iron Golem, but 2 full stacks of Great Soul Arrow and 1 of Homing Soul Mass isn't enough to make it all the way through this guy's health bar. Especially when Homing Soul Mass is currently only summoning 4 orbs. Now, there's a decent chance that I might have had the damage I needed if I hadn't been aiming specifically for the legs in order to get the boss to tumble. I definitely missed a handful of shots while trying to knock him over, and that might have made the difference. But yeah, with those misses, that meant that the end of the fight looked like this. The whole time, I was bargaining with myself like, I can restart, it's fine. I've probably got the damage if I don't miss. But then that needle kept moving, and my muscle memory to dodge the Iron Golem's attacks clicked in, and I was committed. Now, you might Look, like I'm eating my words here about how goated Great Chaos Fireball is against Iron Golem. But not really. I knew it would go hard here. Might have been a little surprised to see it down the Golem in 2 casts, but still figured it would melt him. But like, look at those combustions eat away at him while he's on the ground. Absolutely the better bang for my buck on any other boss that doesn't stand in place to get double hit by the lava left behind by Chaos Fire, or that won't get stunned for a minute at a time if I hit him hard enough with one big blast like that. The consistency of combustion is still coming through as the MVP here. Well, Lightning Spear would be incredible if I could land even a single shot. It's called Karma, by the way, the bastardized American version of it at least, where my attempts to flex on the boss turn into about 6 minutes of dinking my short sword on his knee. And yeah, while the magic damage on the sword might have worked against the snakes, Iron Golem is a touch tankier. So this takes a while. The Anor Londo pathing is at least a little worth going over, considering that it starts with not 1, but 2 gargoyles. Except this time, they're lightning flavored. Then there's the catwalks, which offer very little issue when I've got a shield and some decent damage. And finally, we've got Anor Londo's archers. Even with our primary weapon being totally useless, I can't imagine that much of Anor Londo will cause too much trouble. Oh, and we also pick up the Havel armor before heading in for the main event. This will be continuing from run to run, I imagine. Poison Knife Strat continues to work against the gargoyles. Never really thought I'd be a fan of the poison stuff since it takes so long, but it's a real high-risk, high-reward way to engage with combat. Like, sure, I'm not attacking at all, and the enemy is basically dying automatically, but if I don't have a decent grasp on how to avoid taking damage, then it wouldn't work regardless. Aside from the gargoyles, a parry against the painted guardians on the rafters takes them out in 1 thanks to how amazing the bandit knife is, especially with magic +5 in it. As for the archers, it's all about confidence. Keep your line straight, don't second guess if the archer you don't see is going to clip you, dodge 1 or 2 arrows from the right archer, and a quick parry will see you through. I understand that dodge and parry timing are like the defining aspects of the skill window, but in this case, it's more mindset than execution. Don't let them intimidate you. Know that the left archer will get blocked by the pillar once you get far enough, and keep the pressure on to force the one blocking your path into attacking, and you're good. Even if you suck at parries, like I do in every game after DS1, cycling between blocking and attacking will eventually push him off the ledge anyway. As we head into Anor Londo, some poison knives helps to supplement the damage from the S-Stock to take out the gargoyles and keep my line straight while stabbing away at the painting guardians on the rafters. Even getting a couple of ripostes in there. And finally, 1 more riposte against the right archer, which shows how strong the fire upgrade actually makes the unusable weapon. Although, I gotta say, I'm already missing the bandit knife from the knife run for its crazy critical damage. Alright, we finally got an Anor Londo that means something beyond killing the gargoyles and painting guardians. Instead, we're picking up a new weapon from the Painting Guardians, replacing the Shotel, which had previously replaced the Parrying Dagger, with the Painting Guardian Sword. You know, one of the best dex weapons in the game. So that'll be nice to use once I level it up, which will be after ONS, but at least I don't have to grind for too long to get it now. Slash... Stab, slash, stab, moving on. Listen up, guys. We spent 7 days in the most beautiful castle in all of Lordran. 1 part house of worship and 1 part manor for the lords in Gwyn's dynasty. The place is one of the most beautiful locations in all of gaming, but danger stalks at every step. With gargoyles trying to taser us as soon as we enter, and painted guardians trying to throw us off the rafters, to even these absolute lunatics shooting arrows at us while we try to climb up the castle's buttresses. It was insane. But nowhere near as insane as what came next. Before heading into Anor Londo proper, I head back in order to get the build ready for the second half of the game. Namely, this means using my souls from Iron Golem to hit the int threshold for Soul Spear. This also gives homing Soul Mass that 5th orb. All of that combines to mean that I finally have the damage to kill the Crystal Golem holding Dusk Prisoner. which also means I can get my hands on the full antiquated set. I mean, I only really need the crown, but like, why not enjoy the drip? As for Anor Londo itself, Soul Spear absolutely devours the Gargoyles, and Great Soul Arrow continues to come in clutch as an everyday utility spell. It's seriously great, and as long as I keep my distance from most enemies, I can wear the Dust Crown Ring I got from the Hydra without much extra worry, which helps to save the cast to make it through each area. That being said, don't expect this thing to be on during boss fights. No amount of damage shy of a one-shot will make ONS possible with so little health. Anor Londo goes off without a hitch. Even managed to combust a gargoyle's tail clean off and get myself the gargoyle axe. Not that it'll be useful at all here, and when the parry on the archers fails to get the kill, combustion comes in to finish the job. I do really love the Ira build here, but granted, of course I would. Well, I wrote him that way. Yeah, there was no world where the gargoyles or the archers were going to be a problem as long as I have access to Lightning Spear. Plus, this is basically the Sneck run, but we still get to use parries if we need to. Granted, if we'd swap out the short sword for the Sunlight straight sword, then this would be a Solaire RP, which is why Lunaire here is Sunbro adjacent. A Moonbro. You know, I think it's about time someone in the fandom acknowledges exactly how terrible this fight is. Like, we're in an era where folks like Illusory Wall are making videos to undo the hate on bosses like Capra Demon. Which is a great vid, by the way, even if I still don't like the boss's design. But I need someone to make a breakdown of exactly how broken and unfun ONS really is, and how Dark Souls fans have tricked ourselves into putting them on a pedestal after years of FromSoft failing to make compelling double boss fights, and conflating that if hard game is good because it hard, then hardest boss must be the best boss. For now though, our war of attrition almost ends in the final hour, but we make it through and manage to get our win, spinning our bones along the way. We've got another moment where poison knives get to shine, since both Ornstein and Smo can be poisoned. Although obviously, it would be wasteful to poison them both at the same time. That being said, being able to simply poison one of them in the first phase before backing away and keeping my health up does make this somewhat more manageable than some of the other runs I've done in the past. However, the amount of time it takes for the poison knives to drain ONS means that we get a good long look at exactly how broken these two idiots are. You know what? I remember mentioning it back in the Spellbonk run that I wanted to see a takedown of ONS, and I'm also a firm believer in being the change you want to see in the world. So, let's focus on the big man, Executioner Smo, a name that I am only 80% confident I am saying correctly. Specifically, I want to focus on the only attack that consistently hits me, his stupid snow shoveling scoop, that he absolutely loves to spam when you're at a mid-range distance from the boss. There are a few problems with this one. For one, the collision physics on the hammer for this attack is wonky, and tends to grab the chosen undead if they dodge into the attack, forcing them into position to get hit once the iframes of the dodge wear off. However, worse than the wonky hitbox or Smo's tendency to spam is how inconsistent the attack really is. By that I mean the fact that Mr. Plow has two different speeds for some reason. The first will attack fairly quickly, with Smo only taking about 3 steps before immediately following straight through the curving strike. One saving grace of both speeds is that Smo's own body doesn't actually have a hitbox for this attack, a rarity among Souls-likes to be honest, and so quickly dodging into the scoop can avoid all damage. However, the problem comes when Smo decides it's time to use the long version of the scoop. This instead takes about 6 or more steps and holds the windup of the swipe for an extra second. Considering that the number of iframes on a dodge is roughly 11 of the 60 frames the game plays out per second, and the recovery takes an additional 11 to 14 frames on the fastest roll, and up to 35 on the slowest roll, an extra second of windup from Smo means that a dodge that would have avoided damage on the quick version of the scoop suddenly finds itself stuck in the instability frames when the hitbox comes swinging by. But good luck figuring out which of the two versions he's going to use in the middle of the fight. In short, it's an attack that's certainly avoidable, but the inconsistency makes it unforgivably punishing to the muscle memory that had managed to nail the dodge 20 times in a row when Smo decides arbitrarily to make the attack last an extra few seconds. This sucks, and it's the worst part of the fight, but it's not the only problem I have with it. But I don't have the energy to keep ragging on these two here. Poison them, run away, wait, and we're through. And we've returned to ONS, and I have more to say than I did the last time. We've already talked about Smo's stupid modular scoop, but let's instead focus on Ornstein, who is basically broken. This mostly goes to the charge attack that he starts with, but will use periodically throughout the fight if you get too far away from him. The big problem with this attack is the way that pretty much any obstacle in his way will cause this charge to glitch out, stopping and starting with no wind up or wind down. Instead going from 0 to 100 and back to 0, and back to 100 again, over and over until the actual hit finally whips out with no warning. Considering that he opens with this attack, it can immediately put the player on the back foot with an attack that is fun to read and dodge if it works well, but broken and almost impossible to respond to when it very likely doesn't. And that's kinda all I have to say about Ornstein specifically. He has one broken move that is moderately annoying. Almost feels like I actually like fighting Ornstein. Because I do, in all 3 games that he and his armor appear in actually. But I can clearly say that I'm not good at fighting him alone at the moment. Hence all the deaths to second phase Ornstein until I decide to go for the Super Smo finish and actually finish the fight. But I've kinda run out of steam, so maybe I'll let the next run speak more on the fight. So I've already talked about how deck these two guys are, but let's talk about how hard the actual fight is. Like, I know a lot of Souls fans consider ONS to be the toughest fight before the DLC, and some people even rank these two above Calamite or Manus, but like, that's not even really true. At least not individually. I'll get into what makes them difficult as a pair in a bit though. However, for anyone who's gotten through these games more than once, I want you to really think about which phase is more difficult. Part where one of the two gets a massive power boost and updated moveset, or the part where there happens to be 2 enemies in the same arena at once. Like, yeah, it's pretty obviously the part where there are 2 sources of damage acting independently of each other. I mean, why so there? Summon here doesn't even survive through that section. But once I'm left alone with Smo, he only hits me 1 more time before I take him out. Don't get me wrong, I know how to play this game plenty, but I'm not good at Dark Souls. But a moderate familiarity with each of these bosses can get me within spitting distance of a no-hit on the hardest boss in the game. No, these guys aren't hard. This isn't Godskin Duo, where each individual boss is already difficult, and then slamming the 2 together in the same room makes them an unstoppable force of deadly action. It's 2 mediocre bosses that are only elevated by sharing an arena. It's like the Capra Demon, as is obvious with how easy the lesser Capras in the Demon Ruins are. He isn't hard because of some complex moveset that requires careful timing. He's hard because he has backup and has been crammed into a shoebox with a tree in it that covers half of your screen. The same goes for ONS here. Their individual tools aren't enough to hold a fight together. It's the way that they poorly layer over each other that creates any amount of conflict. Oh, also, I summoned Solaire for this fight. He's a huge help. You should do that if you're struggling against these assholes. This shit sucks. Hey, we'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. Listen, we've been having some fun today, guys, but we need to talk about how absolutely broken Dark Souls' most notorious boss fight is. And how our sponsor at thisisabitdon'tskip.com is trying to raise awareness. See, Ornstein and Smo can't even afford their own rooms, and they constantly butt heads. Half of the time, when Ornstein is trying to prepare some attack, Smo shoves his giant hammer right in the way, and throws off the whole trajectory of the blow, meaning that no one knows where it's going to land! Not even the Dragon Slayer himself. It's a real mess in there. And for a small donation to our friends at thisisabitdon'tskip.com of at least $100,000 or more, you can be a part of the group that whines about it online. And if you use promo code GIVEMEMONEY, then we'll charge your parents' card 10 times in a row and make sure all of that money goes exclusively to pizza and beer. Now back to the video. Whoever calls Sorcery DS1 Secret Easy Mode needs to be shot. You know, there's been some hot takes in my previous runs before this one about the quality of ONS as a boss duo, and I want to keep up that pace. Let's talk about these pillars. These have been a major part of the discourse about ONS since DS2's Throne Watcher and Defender came on the scene, with the major defense of ONS as From Software's good duo being that way because of the very deliberate design of the arena, with pillars that can be used to separate the bosses and give players a chance to get a little one-on-one time with either Ornstein or Smo during the starting phase. This defense is a load of shit, cobbled together by some trace footage where one of the two winds up getting stuck on a pillar for a second, and whoever is putting their argument together uses that moment to get one free hit on the other. However, in practice, these pillars do not separate the bosses for any significant amount of time. The trick to surviving here is not about getting someone stuck on a pillar or splitting their attention across one. This is because the bosses can reach through the pillars with their attacks, meaning that keeping them on opposite sides of the pillars doesn't actually keep you safe. Also, it takes no time at all to walk around. In terms of the sorcery I've been falling back on for this run, there isn't even enough time to get off a heavy soul arrow before either boss is back in your face again. But in terms of some melee runs, most strength weapon R2s like hammers, axes, and halberds are too slow to whip out while splitting the bosses on the pillars before they're already back together again. This isn't to say that one or the other can't get stuck on a pillar for a while, but it really isn't consistent enough to fully depend on. What the pillars are best at is absorbing some hits, like Ornstein's Lightning Spear, which can be stopped by standing behind a pillar, even a broken one. This can also work to keep Smo's scoop from getting too close. So there are useful features of the environment, but not for actually separating the bosses. Instead, they can give players the chance to back up and heal or use a projectile. These were super helpful for using poison knives or casting spells, but as far as separating the two, that's best done by baiting Ornstein to chase you right after Smo has done a big hammer smash or jump attack. That gives about as much time apart as trying to pry them apart on a pillar, and usually gives a good opportunity to attack, since Ornstein will usually chase with an attack that can be countered. Right. ONS is over party. Let's see. What haven't I talked about? Gone over the fact that phase 2 is the easy part because they're only difficult together. Gone over that stupid Smo scoop. Ornstein's glitchy charge. Oh, I know. I've got one final thing to talk about, but we're definitely getting into nitpick territory. Why the hell can Ornstein's Lightning Spear go through Smo's body? They even go through his hammer, which acts like a shield if I so much as look towards the same state that it's in, let alone touch it. Everything we've gone through so far, with Ornstein's wonky stuttering, Smo's collision grabbing everything from Ornstein to the player, and the two bosses not working in tandem at all, makes this run the toughest attempt against these guys so far. Especially after Adrian Bowman and Inda Klurb, a lack of useful range on the Pyromancy makes phase 1 incredibly tough. To the point that I need the extra poise of the Havel armor to make it through the first phase. It doesn't work every time though, and every missed spell adds a full minute of smacking away with my scimitar on the Super Smo final boss fight. Alright, I've said my piece about ONS. I don't think I'd call them a wonderfully designed fight, and most of their difficulty comes from the happenstance of being two enemies in one arena and a touch of jank shared between the two. That being said, I get the logic of calling this the best fight in the base game because it's the hardest. Dark Souls is in fact the hard game, and so the fight that is the toughest test of skill should naturally be considered the best of the bunch. The main problem I have with that mindset is that I don't find the difficulty to be fair at all times, and in some cases doesn't even appear intended. So I can't give it full credit for that difficulty or design quality, especially when we've seen From Software design better before and after ONS. Also, for this run, Ornstein's lightning resistance meant that I had to spend the entire first phase slashing away. Fortunately, the divine weapon path gives us magic damage instead of lightning or some type of holy something like from later games. So each hit is pretty good, even if I can only get one off at a time. After that, Smo is pretty easy to take down with my full stack of lightning spears and the short sword. With ONS dead, we can finally pick up the Lordvessel and start warping around. We've got a few things to pick up at this point, but it mostly amounts to a certain amount of grinding in order to reach our next boss. This is the real reason we opened up the depths, because for now, this is the best humanity farm that I know outside of the DLC. Maybe if I find a better one, I'll update it, but for now, we kill rats, pick up some humanity, and take it to Quelaag's sister in order to open up the shortcut to Lost Izalith, which has a few benefits. For one, we can come here to grind up enough red titanite chunks and snag a red titanite slab in order to fully upgrade our bone wheel shield to fire plus 10. I even get a trophy for finishing the upgrade path. And then we can also prepare for our next boss fight. Not much in the way of additional upgrades on this run after getting the Lordvessel, aside from stocking up on some firebombs and dumping some souls into vitality and strength to boost my survivability and the strength of those firebombs. We're pretty much heading straight into the Lord Soul hunt. At this point, we've already started on our way towards getting our weapon upgraded through the fire path, including having picked up the large flame ember a while ago. So as we head into the Lord Soul hunt post ONS, we do the rat farm for extra humanity to get the Lost Ceaseless shortcut and start the next boss fight. We've mostly got our endgame build put together already, so this isn't exactly an update on gear now. Although, we have now officially traded out the Shotel for the Painting Guardian Sword. And it's a pretty big upgrade, actually. Better dex scaling, and I can finally get the bleed that normally makes the thief so deadly against a bunch of bosses. So, let's use that new bleed against Demon Fire Sage and Centipede Demon. It's fine, they're both baby easy, and we can move on to the actual bosses for the run. Besides, this detour was more about getting that Solaire summon and getting him prepared to survive through to the end of the game. We already killed the Sunlight Maggot after all. Oh my god. Humanity Farm, open the way. Alright, 555. What's up, guys? You're not going to believe what happened when we placed the Lordvessel. Honestly, the only build crafting left to do involves Logan in the Duke's Archives, so some of this is going to be out of order, but we'll leave that discussion for when we get there. Not much to add to the build at this point. All souls have been going towards upgrading the Pyromancy Flame and increasing my vitality. It's been kind of a mixed bag because I never seem to have enough souls to finish upgrading everything. But I also have nothing else to really spend these souls on. Definitely more streamlined than the Sorcerer run. Dropping off the Lordvessel now unlocks a few things for us. For one, we'll be heading to Duke's Archives a bit early in order to do some humanity farming against the Mind Flayers in the library jail, rather than the rats in the depths. This has actually been the go-to for the last few runs, since the Mind Flayers give better souls and have roughly the same drop rate as the rats. Once we get that humanity, we use Chaos Servant to get the shortcut to Lost Izalith, and we can start farming the Sunlight Maggots for Sunlight Metals. This takes a long time, by the way, but the benefit is that now we can finally get Great Lightning Spear, which more than doubles our damage potential, with 10 more casts that are stronger than the original 10.
Ain't nothing gonna break my stride, ain't nothing gonna slow me down, whoa, I've got to keep on moving.
Bit of Chaos Cheese and get the kill with our primary weapon for once. Alright, next location is the Duke's Archives, where we run away from the bulls, blender up the crystal hollows, and quickly die to Seath. Thank goodness we don't get cursed here. Either way, the only other thing to note here is the 4th Firekeeper soul. Then we get access to our next fight. Run past the bulls, parry the Crystal Knight, and die to Seath, which ends with me being cursed. A Purging Stone quickly solves that problem, but we're going to need to find a way to stop that in future runs. I'd say not much else to see here, but we do get a fairly critical item here after being killed by Seath. Namely, this is where we'll get the large magic ember, which lets us upgrade our bandit knife to magic plus 10. But we'll only really get to about plus 7 before the end of the run. I'm not planning on taking that invisible pass at the Crystal Caves for a blue Titanite slab. Not worth the effort, so instead we head straight for the next boss. Repost the Crystal Knight, die to Seath, snag the bonfire. I think this section might be getting repetitive, and there's really nothing of note to grab for this build. Although I will point out that the rare Ring of Sacrifice is finally coming in handy, as it allows us to die to Seath without worrying about getting cursed. Saves us from the hassle of having to go get a Purging Stone after the fake-out fight. No curse for me, Dragon Daddy. Hey guys, we spent 15 years inside of an old aristocrat's personal library. He was a little mad at us at first, blasting Adrian with his crystal breath and then locking him away in a dungeon. But we got the key to our freedom and spent the next decade and a half devoting our every waking moment to study. Our minds have expanded beyond the need for physical pleasures, and we only survive off of algorithmic engagement. So don't forget to smash that like button and hit subscribe if you aren't already. Only if you aren't. Only if you fucking aren't. Don't hit it if you're subscribed. Do you understand me? Do you hear what I am saying? Stay subscribed. Because otherwise, we'll fade from this plane of existence and be sent to the hell dimension known as the Editor's Dungeon. Oh, and we got the soul of a firekeeper. Isn't that insane? Okay, Duke's Archives is the next big item on the checklist for this run. Namely, we need to get killed by Seath, unlock the main bonfire, and rescue Logan from his cage with the Firekeeper Soul. From here, we can access the Crystal Soul Spear, Crystal Homing Soul Mass, White Dragon Breath, Logan's Catalyst, and the Tin Crystallization Catalyst. We need a lot of souls to get all of this stuff, so we won't have everything until well after Seath and the Bed of Chaos, which actually comes between here and the Seath fight for this run. That being said, those spells in Logan's Catalyst will be the end of the build improvements. The Tin Crystallization one adds a lot of extra damage, but not necessarily enough to make up for the lesser casts without being combined with the Dusk Crown Ring. So yeah, let's get to those bosses. We get to actually kill the bulls for once. Fire Orb the Crystal Knight to death, and thank goodness we got the rare Ring of Sacrifice. And we're good here. Time to kill Seath. Alright, we've already seen that we've been wandering these halls, but yeah, parry the Crystal Knight, die to Seath, and pick up the Firekeeper Soul. The section seemed more important to include earlier on, but now it feels like it's gotten repetitive. At least I get to show off some sick parries. Those are always fun. You know, there was a time when Seath was one of my favorite fights in this game, but once you realize how simple his attacks really are, he's kinda boring when you aren't going for the tail cut. So naturally, we go for the tail cut, get my favorite weapon, which I won't be able to equip, and move on. GG, easy, let's go. Now that we've finally made the pivot to firebombs, Seath gives us a bit of a choice between making the fight go a bit faster with black firebombs, or being more economical with my soul expenditure with the regular firebombs. Indecision definitely stops me up here for a hot minute, but eventually I decide that conserving my souls takes precedence over the faster kill, especially given that Seath isn't exactly the toughest boss to avoid anyway. So an elongated fight isn't really the problem here. It gets dicey a few times, especially with that curse buildup, but overall, regular firebombs do the job and we get through with some free-aimed shots for the end. Not much unique about fighting Seath with the Estoc Battle Axe combo. Turns out, having a usable weapon in at least one hand makes Seath pretty simple. Moving on. Is it obvious that all of these back-to-back runs are starting to take their toll on me at this point? Because I don't even bother with attempting the tail cut. Instead, we get Seath to break his own crystal and bleed his big ball until we're done. Next. Yeah. Give me your ball, Dragon Daddy. This dragon tried to live forever, but Adrian found the secret to his immortality and made him break it in his own rage, forcing him to unsubscribe from life. Then, we shot him in the balls with 1,000 arrows, because that's what happens when you unsubscribe from anything. MoviePass owns your soul now. Now, with Seath having a decent level of resistance to magic damage, this seems like a pretty obvious weak point in this run. And sure, my damage isn't quite as cracked as it would be against some other bosses, but with all of our magic resources I have at my disposal at the moment, he isn't too bad. Hell, my first hit with Soul Spear and Homing Soul Mass hitting at the same time almost looks like this is going to be very quick. But that was all of my strongest spells hitting at once. So of course it looked huge. Otherwise though, Seath is probably the simplest Lord Soul fight, aside from cheesing Bed of Chaos, so he goes down without much additional trouble. So we've replaced Great Chaos Fireball with the regular Great Fireball, so that we have more spell slots available. And honestly, it might not have been necessary. Fire Orb absolutely wrecks Seath, and I don't even need to bust out the combustions to finish him off. Pyromancy's sick. Fun fact, Great Lightning Spear is about as strong as the strongest sorceries and pyromancies, except for the fact that we get way more casts this way. So yeah, this is more baby easy than the supposedly baby easy modes of sorcery or pyromancy. And this didn't cost me all of my souls to unlock the extra casts. Looks like Faith might be taking the top spot for magic classes, but I should really crank the numbers on that before I make any definitive statements. Our next target is past the catacombs, which means we need to get down to Pinwheel and kill him. But without the ability to permanently kill the skeletons, however will I make it down to the Pinwheel fight? Oh, guess I can make 2 drops and I'm already here. And would you look at that, I've also killed Pinwheel. It's Pinwheel. He was never going to be a real obstacle on the path here. Now that we're through the fight, we can go ahead and see which mask he dropped. And don't worry guys, I'll actually let you know which ones they each are. In this case, it's the mask of the mother. Gotta say, if anything is gonna show the struggle of this run, it's gotta be taking a minute and a half to kill Pinwheel. It's not exactly a difficult fight, especially since I'm coming down here after ONS, but even when I move from trying to slash at him with the magic bandit knife to the firebombs, it takes a hot minute to finally take the squishiest boss in the game down. Saving Pinwheel for this late into the game really trivializes him. Like, having this much health means that there's nothing that Pinwheel can actually do to you. He's definitely more fun if you can't tank through everything he throws at you, which at least gives the guessing game of which one is the real Pinwheel some stakes, or puts pressure on the strategy of clearing out all of the clones before they can attack. For now, we bowl over him and pick up our mask. You know, sometimes you gotta wonder what the thought process was on some of the NPC summon placements. Like, why does Paladin Leroy show up against Pinwheel? For one, the clones confuse him so much that he's hardly useful. And secondly, it's Pinwheel. I already shred him to death before Leroy even knows that the fight has started. The dude's better used for fighting the Bonewheel skeletons, not the boss. Well, regardless, we make it through and pick up our prize. Stupid Pinwheel. Living is for kids. How's it going, guys? Let me tell you about this guy, Pinwheel. He's so weak that he didn't even last for 100 arrows. It's almost like he's meant to be fought early, except for the fact that it sucks to walk back up through the catacombs. But hey, at least we got a mask out of it. Not sure what's more disappointing, the initial whiff or the fact that I would have one-shot the boss if I'd been using the tin crystallization catalyst. Well, I can push the disappointment on everyone else with the mask reveal. Once again, Pinwheel does Pinwheel things and dies instantly. Blah blah, Pinwheel's easy, blah blah blah. Okay, time to kill Nito. Jeez, the skeletons are a real pain in the ass, I won't lie. Kinda wish I'd made the Bonewheel divine for this. Still, as long as I can get up in Nito's grundle, the lack of range isn't really a problem, and we can use our generous amount of flasks to tank through most of what he can throw at us. And that only leaves one Lord Soul remaining. Once through the Tomb of the Giants, Nito is a bit of a pill. This whole run has been defined by completely lacking any damage, and even with a few levels in strength at this point, the Black Firebombs are not bridging that gap. So once again, we're forced into a war of attrition with a boss that really tests survivability. At the very least, backstabbing and riposting the skeleton helpers does do enough to temporarily remove them from the fight after a couple stabs. But it's honestly better to lure Nito into killing them himself. That being said, if he decides to spam his AoE too often, then that could be problematic, even with my shield. Fortunately, Nito is fairly kind and we get through this in one attempt, even if we do cut it close more than once. Before we get to the fight, I noticed a neat thing about the sunlight maggot that helps us through the Tomb of the Giants. Look at what happens to the little light ball when we roll. I love the way that it floats off the helmet and bobs up and down as the player's model height shrinks while rolling. It's adorable. Little guy's all confused and like, "Hat, put me back on the hat." Oh, thank goodness. Home. Okay, on to Nito. It's alright. Skeletons are a bit of a hassle, as normal, but Nito takes care of them for me. Fortunately, the S-Dog has really great range, so I can mostly poke the boss for free from any angle, even through the cloak, which is usually a major dead zone for Nito's hurtbox. So yeah, pretty simple fight. No NPC for this fight, even though Nito gets to bring back up. Kinda unfair if you ask me, but you didn't. You don't care what I think. You don't even listen to... What was I saying? Oh, right, Nito. Yeah, one of the bigger problems I run into here is about the same as the last run. The lack of a shield turns his AoE into an RNG-based timer for when I simply won't have the health or Estus required to keep fighting. That and the fact that he keeps doing his little ground stab, especially at the start of the fight, meaning that I'm on my back foot from go. The Painted Guardian Sword is doing work though. Even though it's only plus 10 at this point, it's still able to chunk away at Nito well enough to get me through the fight as long as the RNG of his attack patterns are a little more in my favor. Decent fight. Probably my favorite of the 4 Lord Souls these days, even if the initial fall into the arena is kinda bullshit. Die again, die again. Dead man. This man came back from the dead, only to be killed again in the ritual sacrifice required to light the way to the heart of the world and restart the flame that keeps the Age of Fire going. And Adrian Bowman did it without even breaking a sweat. Guys, this is literally the most epic thing that anyone has ever done. Like, Nito was the first of the dead, using a giant curved sword made of bones and trying to inflict us with toxic while his followers absolutely dogpiled on us. We thought it was all over, but Adrian, never even looking worried, took this dead man's Lord Soul without even using 50 arrows. It was insane. You know, I almost debated equipping fall control for the entrance into this fight, since taking such a huge chunk of health right away totally sucks. But that's rarely what actually gets me killed. I mean, I might take a hit from his ground stab attack while I'm trying to heal off that initial hit, but it's still not the real trouble of the fight. The real trouble is pretty much entirely greed. It only takes a few hits to take Nito down with how powerful Crystal Soul Spear and the rest of my kit is. So in that case, the bigger danger that gets me killed is getting risky with my positioning and taking more hits than I can afford. That being said, Nito can only afford a handful of hits himself, and that's all it takes to take him down. Man, sorcery is completely goated. Like a free easy mode. Good news! The great fireball damage is great against Nito. Bad news! I can't dodge the ground stab for shit. Better news! I gotta try again, and it goes a lot better on the second fight. Skeletons are a pain in the ass, but fortunately, it works out in my favor still. Some interesting things happen with Nito, or more importantly, with his little skeleton friends. Turns out, a Divine +5 short sword, because I never bothered to pick up the large Divine Ember or any white Titanite chunks, that I don't even have the dexterity to wield, is capable of killing Nito skeletons faster than a Stora's straight sword could at max upgrade with a character built specifically to use it. So please, folks in the comments of that video, tell me how wrong I am about how absolutely abysmal the ass is, when a weapon that I cannot wield is out damaging it, is out DPSing it with a busted moveset. Anyway, the point is, the ass still sucks, the short sword goes harder than I ever would have given it credit for, and Lightning Spear is goated. Before we can head down into the Abyss, we need to kill the Abyss Walker's puppy. Man, killing Sif really doesn't make me feel like the good guy. Fortunately, the Fire Bone Wheel has us mostly covered on defense and offense, dealing enough damage for Sif to never really be a problem, but also dealing enough damage to mostly skip the limping phase at the end. Hopefully the deeps will equate to an easy kill on the next fight. Clearly reading the room, Sif attempts to avoid the oncoming death by 1,000 cuts right at the start, but duty calls and we find ourselves locked in this battle of attrition. Honestly, the worst part about being so weak has got to be the fact that we're stuck watching Sif limp for even longer. So yes, I won, but at the same time, not really. So for the last 2 runs, I had a shield to use against Sif, which really trivializes the fight in a lot of ways. With the S-Stock in my left hand, I instead need to get my dodging on point in order to survive the fight. Fortunately, it doesn't take long to get a rhythm down and properly get out of the way of those massive sword swipes. I even managed to get the last few hits in with the battle axe, and the fire buff really gives it some decent damage. Almost feels like the S-Stock isn't fully necessary. But that's neither here nor there. Would you look at that? We finally got another boss that we can bleed. Yeah! I'd give it to DS1 that the bleed is as good in this game as it would eventually be in, like, DS3 and Elden Ring, but so many of the later bosses are completely immune to the status. And those that aren't immune, like Sif, spend so much time slowly backing away faster than I can run that I barely get any bleed me's throughout the fight. A neat status effect that would be nice to be allowed to capitalize on more frequently. But instead, becomes an otherwise unused aspect of some of the game's best weapons. Sleep tight, little puppy. Guys, I'm not really happy with this one, but we had to do it for the content. Listen, this gray wolf here is the only thing that stands between us and the abyss, which is our last stop before lordhood. And honestly, guys, we really needed this one for the content. Views have been slipping, and so we knew that the only way to get people to come back was to put this dog down and plaster her dead body all over the thumbnail. So we didn't want to do it, guys, but the algorithm demanded it, and we must do
as the almighty algorithm demands. Otherwise, we'll cease to be relevant.
Wow, that was fast. She didn't even get the chance to limp. Man, I guess sorcery really is the hidden easy mode. Pretty obvious observation here, but turns out fur and fire don't mix very well, no matter how many letters they share. So yeah, Sif doesn't last long against the power of the pyromancy flame. Let's go. Boy, from the look of this footage, you'd assume that I absolutely love whiffing. I also must love useless rings, since I'm apparently still wearing the gold serpent ring during a boss fight for some reason. But it's fine. After a minute of flailing and failing, Sif calms down enough for me to hit her with a few lightning spears, and the lightning, once again, proves itself to be massively overpowered. And we can finally head to grab the final Lord Soul. Alright, we lower the water in New Londo, and since this run doesn't really require the very large ember, we skip that and make our drop straight down into the abyss. This isn't exactly a run where New Londo has a lot to offer. We don't really need the very large ember or the titanite chunks. So we drain the water and pretty quickly head to the next fight. Get the key, drain the water, let's go. So, the path to New Londo this time takes a bit of a detour. Because not only are we going to have to release the waters, but we also need to go get a quick kill on the Moonlight Butterfly with the help of Witch Beatrice before we can actually head into the next main boss. While we're here in New Londo, we also grab some titanite chunks and the very large ember. Yeah, we're well into calling the Painted Guardian Sword our major supplement at this point. It works so well juxtaposed to the primary longsword in our right hand. Ember. Chunk. We spent 7 entire centuries in this flooded city, and your head will explode when you find out what happens if you aren't subscribed and haven't liked the video yet. So, you know what to do. Smash the buttons, and we promise to call the sniper off. This time. New Londo was once a vibrant city of man, made to rival even the beautiful home of the lords known as Anor Londo. But the city was devastated by the rise of the Abyss and the arrival of the Dark Wraiths. So, the Lord Gwyn himself had the city flooded and condemned, destined to now only be populated by the souls of the damned who dare to stray from the light. But we're not here for all of that. All we want is the very large ember and some titanite chunks to upgrade our composite bow. Nothing really to see here. Nothing from the end club run comes from New Londo, so let's skip to the next one. Drain the water and go fight the boss. Nothing to see here. With no regularly upgraded weapons to worry about or titanite chunks worth grabbing, New Londo is pretty uneventful. I said, New Londo is uneventful. Drain the damn water already. This is the only run in the entire video where that actually happened, by the way. Every other character got through that, no problem. But Lunaire, apparently, couldn't manage it. Now that we're about as strong as we're going to get, it's time to take on the DPS check. This is also where we'll use that Havel's armor that we picked up all the way back in Anor Londo. So, how do we handle the DPS check? Technically that's a pass? I mean, as long as they don't consistently stall with the grab and such. Honestly, the biggest problem is the stamina recovery while wearing this much armor. I've got the FAP ring on for extra stamina, but stamina regeneration is so low, and the stamina draw of the bone wheel is so crazy that I can't attack very frequently, even if each attack does a ton of damage. All the same, we managed to kill all 4 kings without getting overwhelmed, and we've only got one last obstacle between us and credits. Not gonna lie, this fight almost killed this entire video. Damn near killed me from the concussion I gave myself after struggling through the first attempt against these assholes. For starters, even the black firebombs don't have the DPS to get us through the check that is the 4 kings. So we're quickly overwhelmed by multiple kings at once. Then there's the fact that DS1's throwing aim is absolute garbage, which means that spamming the throw button leads to wasting a lot of firebombs. Normally I can counter this by throwing at my feet or the boss's feet instead. But nothing about the 4 kings is normal, and the Abyss is as far from ordinary as boss arenas come. So naturally, that means that throwing firebombs at the ground here sends them trailing off into the distance, forever falling below us into the endless dark. Fantastic. And then, as I run out of Estus charges, the kings gang up on me, and I see all of the resources that went into this fight that was almost finished fade into the ether as well. Black firebombs are expensive, and now I needed to grab another 100 in order to attempt the fight again. Honestly, if this didn't go better on my second attempt, then I'm not sure if I'd have kept going for a third or fourth. Fortunately, on my second go into the pit, I'd kindled the Firelink bonfire, resisted the urge to spam as much as I had before, and the defense from the Havel's armor helps me crest the worst that this run had to offer. Only one fight left. This one doesn't go well for a while. Like, really not well. Like, really not well. If not almost extremely well, but also soul-crushingly, disappointingly bad. At least I don't need to worry about restocking my ability to hit stuff between attempts. So all I need to do is go back down and try it again. And again. Until finally, each of the 4 kings goes down. Or maybe like 6 kings, because like, who are all these other guys in the background when I actually get the kill? Hot damn, Beatrice is going for this fight. Absolutely beasting the 4 kings down with her magic. Her AI seems to make her attack infrequently enough to not be able to pass the DPS test on her own. That, and I have no idea how many casts of each spell she has. But yeah, she's doing real work. We almost get this in 3 kings thanks to the dabblage on display. Real glad I decided to bring her in for this fight. Havel for the win. Guys, I can't begin begin to tell you what happened when we met the Four Kings. Dropping down into their domain in the abyss below New Londo, these former Lords of Man, appointed by Gwyn himself, immediately attacked us as soon as we approached. Their minds are completely gone, and all they could think is to fight anything that contains the light of Gwyn's fire, like we currently have imprinted on us through the very dark sign that strips us of our humanity every time we die, but also revives us in our withered, hollow form. Anyway, the Four Kings put up a bit of a fight, but with Adrian Bowman wearing full Havel armor, they couldn't break through his defenses long enough to stop the onslaught of arrows raining from the composite bow. Some shots didn't exactly land on target, but it was nothing that money couldn't buy, as we had already purchased almost 1,000 heavy arrows for Adrian to keep in his quiver. Not gonna lie, I wasn't entirely sure if keeping the Dusk Crown, I know it's actually called the Crown of Dusk, on over the Havel helmet would be an issue, but even without the helmet, the armor managed to do what I needed from it. And having the damage on point meant that I absolutely obliterated the Four Kings. Hell, this is the first run in the set where we passed the DPS test fast enough that I have to wait for the next king. And we even managed to get a 3-king kill, rather than needing to go after all 4, or even 5 in at least one case before this. Sorcery simply cannot be beat. Not an ounce of struggle since ONS. Surely Gwyn doesn't have any heartache in store for me. So while I've definitely been having a better time with this Pyromancy run than with the Sorcery one that beat this boss in 3 kings like 10 seconds ago, I gotta admit that this one doesn't exactly have the same damage potential as Sorcery. This is definitely because of the fact that I'm unfamiliar with Pyromancy, so it's a little bit of that playing Dark Souls for the first time effect happening as I sort of rediscover the game through the new lens. All that being said, Pyromancy absolutely rips through the Four Kings, and we're ready for the finale. It's honestly a little surprising that the Lightning Spear was at a razor-thin margin for the DPS check. Basically, if the first king hadn't grabbed me, then I would have had the DPS check no problem. But in comparison, Indeclurb waited for like 10 seconds per king. So yeah, a bit inconclusive there on overall endgame DPS between Crystal Soul Spear and Great Lightning Spear. Still, Havel's armor does its job, and the 20 cast is more than enough to get us through the fight. Finally, it's time for Gwyn. Not gonna lie, when I don't have access to a parry, this guy might be the hardest fight in Dark Souls. Like, between his crazy poise damage, hyperspeed moveset, and input reading on item usage, he kicks my ass more than once. It takes a few attempts and some reworking on my final armored set, but a combination of swapping the bone wheel for my bare hand to get some parries, and some aggression on the fleeting moments he gives me to get my own attacks off, and we finally managed to eke out a win. It is by no means clean, and by no means easy, but in the end, the job is done, and we can link the fires. Beating Dark Souls as a warrior, wielding a catalyst he can't even use. Gwyn doesn't go perfect, and Knife dies to him once, but we make the run back, get into the groove with the parries, and the Bandit Knife proves exactly how goated it is by chunking away at Gwyn's health, even when I still lack the dexterity to actually wield it. Seriously, more than a full section of health with each riposte. That is some damage Knife had only dreamed to see for the rest of this run. And thank goodness that his run is finally over. I don't know how I'll even manage to keep up the energy for this whole challenge if I have to do runs this bad so many times in a row. And that's how you no-hit Gwyn with a battle axe you can't wield. This kinda reminds me of the first time I ever played Dark Souls. I'd made it through most of the game without ever summoning other players, but I would occasionally join others to help them through certain bosses. So for the finale against Gwyn, I decided to summon someone to help me out. I got a dude wielding Smo's hammer, and I think that this one interaction is part of the reason why I am as big of a Souls fan as I am now. Because this guy kicked Gwyn's ass so hard that I felt completely underwhelmed by the fight, and immediately jumped into New Game Plus, so that I could fight him for real, without help. Had that never happened and I actually got to fight Gwyn for real before beating him, I might have put the game down after rolling credits like I did for Demon Souls, and gone back to playing Kingdom Hearts or Final Fantasy X for the 100th time in a row. And it was on that second playthrough, taking a mage build through the game, that I really fell in love with Dark Souls. So yeah, without that rando ruining the fight for me by trivializing it to the point of making Gwyn feel forgettable, then I might never have gotten so invested in From Software, and this channel might not even exist. And I don't even remember the dude's name. Anyway, Solaire isn't as overpowered as that other dude, although I will say that he does take enough aggro to remove the most egregious part of the Gwyn fight. Takes an insurmountable flurry of fire and steel and makes it a pretty manageable double team on an old man clinging to his cinders. You know, even with my story about being underwhelmed when I first summoned for Gwyn, I've never understood the mentality that summoning NPCs or other players was somehow cheese. Like, it's part of the game. It would be like calling the Ceaseless Ledge or Iron Giant tumble cheese. There are unique animations made to accommodate those strategies. Imagine being the dude whose job it was to make summons work, and then after the game ships, a bunch of sweats are like, fuck you, that's cheese. It's part of the game. Eat broadsword, big man. And now we're here, guys. We all knew it was coming, but we hoped it wouldn't be so soon. That Adrian Bowman would have to hang up the bow for good. But first, we have one more fight to get through. And Gwyn, Lord of Cinder, is an incredible final match for the Adrian and his composite bow. A brutal tyrant who charges at full strength anytime we create any distance between us. However, the tables completely turned when we found out one weird trick that made Miyazaki fucking rage. Turns out, if you attack Gwyn with a ranged attack, he's programmed to automatically dodge, taking large leaps to either side. But if you're close enough when you do it, Gwyn will still get hit by the projectile, and leave himself open on the recovery frames of his dodge. So, if you can nail that distance and shoot at rapid speed, he won't be able to counter, and you can shred the rest of his health in a heartbeat. It's enough to see us through, and close the book on Adrian Bowman's story. For now, anyway. Whoever claims that sorcery is the baby easy mode should be strapped to the front of the next Blue Horizon rocket as it rams into the sun. To say that this does not go well is a bit of an understatement, and I cannot express how exhausted I am of Gwyn and this game, and these runs, and this stupid video. Death after death after death grinds my mind down until I don't think I'll be able to actually cast my spells anymore. So, screw it. It's tank time. Fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck you. Of course. Fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck you. Damn it, am I really... damn it. Oh, am I really coming down at this point? Maybe a monster will help? Anyway, that's how you no-hit Gwyn with pyromancy. So close to getting the no-hit again. And while Gwyn's own boys watched too. Would have been an epic way to close out the video. Well, regardless, yeah, the unwieldable straight sword does a pretty rock-solid job of killing Gwyn as long as you can parry loop him forever. And now we get to Link the Flame. 10 times in a row, bringing a whole new age of flame. Why? Are you so depraved you'd plunge the world into darkness? Do not call me your misnomer. I was deprived of soul and light alike, and you branded me this monster. So the monster you shall have, in the dark, that you deserve. Okay. So, final thoughts time on the definitive proof determining which class is best by making them all play through the entire game with a different class's weapon they can't wield as their primary. Well, a lot of these runs were really fun to do, and I'd love to take some of the concepts back into the game to fight all of the side bosses, and even dive into the DLC. Couldn't do that for now, since this video was already taking 1,000 years to make. I mean, I was hitting dudes with stuff I couldn't even properly hold. Quite the slog, to be honest. But if I had to give the winning mark to anyone, it would have to be Spellbonk, our warrior with the Sorcerer's Catalyst as his primary weapon. Although, if I am being honest, he really only succeeds thanks to how awesome the Bone Wheel Shield is, which wasn't really the point of the run. Huh. So, I guess that unfortunately disqualifies him. Well, in that case, the runner-up was definitely Adrian Bowman. I'd actually planned to do a bow-only run for a long time, but that's been done to death across every FromSoft game. So it was pretty nice to actually get to fit that into the rotation at some point. Although wasn't the point of that run supposed to be an unupgraded hand axe? Man, that weapon sucked, and I never even used it. I guess that disqualifies him too. Damn. Alright, it's fine. We've got our second runner-up still, the Pyromancer. That's a similar one I've really been wanting to dabble in for a while, but I've always put on the back burner for the same reasons as the bow run. Both of those help to make Dark Souls feel very new, even after playing it for almost 15 years at this point. Super glad I tried both of these, and I definitely suggest them to anyone who wants that Dark Souls for the first time vibe. It's not quite there, but it's close. Then again, it also wasn't exactly a test of an unwieldable scimitar, so shit. I think I need to disqualify this one too. Then I guess the Sorcerer? Because it was nice to fall back on my casual go-to of sorceries from before I started attempting speedruns and challenge stuff. No, because Into Club barely used the club. Okay. How about the Cleric? Lightning Spear is goated and really easy to get on board, even for casual play, as long as you start with the Master Key, or are fine with waiting until after killing the Taurus Demon. But that still means I didn't actually use the Short Sword as my main, huh? Fuck, then the Thief? Since the Painted Guardian Sword is such a good dex but that isn't the Long Sword I was supposed to be using. Wait, hold on, maybe the Wanderer? I mean, yeah, the S-Stock was super interesting, and I even managed to no-hit Gwyn with my actual primary weapon, even though that was like only one of 5 enemies that I actually used the Battle Axe on as a proper main. Then it goes to the Bandit, who used the Butcher Knife instead of the Broadsword the whole time. No, it can't be the Knight. Knife sucked. The Bandit Knife was so weak in his hands that I had to use poison knives and fire bombs for everything. Yeah, he's disqualified too. Wait, that's everyone. Then what was the point of this Hey, it's that time again. The end of the video, where I invite folks to come check out the Patreon, link in the description, and make good on the rewards for those currently pledged. Patreon members get early access to new content and their names written in the credits at the end of videos. And those who pledge in the top tiers get their names read out, like our DevBox designers, Genghis Braun, and our DevBox developers, Azul. Thanks for your support, and thanks for watching. Hot damn, this video took forever to make, and 10 runs through this game in a row? I don't think I ever want to play DS1 again. This run almost bricked my PS5 twice. I think I'll take a break for a bit, and finally finish reading Lightbringer. Or maybe making my short film. Or maybe I'll take this time to actually give DS2 a try. The only DS2 I'll allow in my house, at least.